SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Thinking about a new vehicle? Trust the team that's been taking care of customers for 70 years. The Cannon family has helped thousands drive home happy. Come take a test drive today and see why. And remember, when the smoke clears, nobody beats a Cannon deal. Nobody.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Hump Day. All right, it's the big semifinal matchup this afternoon. England and Argentina, like 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think kickoff's at 2.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't help but think about the Falklands skirmish. Remember that? This is like a redo of that. What was that, 1981, 82, something?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Something like that.
I want to say 82.
Yeah, that sounds right. I was living in Baton Rouge at the time. But this is... kind of makes you, it reminded me of it anyhow when I saw Argentina and jolly old England going to be at it. So, and then on the other side, France.
Yeah, France and Spain played yesterday afternoon, and Spain did to France what Belgium did to the U.S. They came out with a perfect game plan, never let France get comfortable on the ball, and basically played keep away.
They're pretty good, is Spain, right?
They are defending European champions.
Yeah.
They won the last Euro tournament, which is like the mini World Cup taking place with only European teams.
Yeah. They're pretty good, so we're getting all set. The semifinals, at least half of the finals in place. One competitor, one participant. We will know the other before the day is out.
Yeah, out of 104 matches in this tournament, we're down to the last 3. You've got this semifinal matchup this afternoon, and then third-place matchup between France and the loser this afternoon will be on Saturday, and then the finals will be Sunday afternoon.
There you go.
Complete with a halftime show like it's the Super Bowl.
Well, I know you have thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, we should point out, with respect to this England versus Argentina match later today, the semifinal match, what do you bet that every television set in those respective countries will be tuned in, right? It's incredible. We don't, I guess, really understand quite the passion that exists in those countries, which this is their big deal. Kind of like our Super Bowl, but I think the difference in this country is we have so many other sports, so many other interests as well. But this is pretty much it for those guys.
And the Super Bowl's every year, so even if you don't have a dog in the hunt or a team in the fight, you can still watch and be a part of the festivities.
Yeah.
Whereas the World Cup's just like the Olympics, only every 4 years.
Yeah. Well, it's good to be back. Appreciate Dave filling in yesterday. I was down at the Capitol, which, by the way, are they back under the dome again today in a special session? I believe so, right? The governor has ordered lawmakers back on in there. They are talking about youth court laws. I didn't see this one coming. Wasn't on my bingo card, as the saying goes. There is an article about it. that is published at supertalk.fm. Caleb Sailors authored this particular piece. Starts out by saying Governor Tate Reeves has abruptly called a special session regarding Mississippi's youth court laws. So they're going to be, he announced that yesterday, they're coming in today at 3 p.m. Hold on to your wallets, even though they're just talking about youth courts. You never know what other ideas they may have. Of course, in a special session, the difference is the governor dictates what the subject will be, what the task will be. And in this case, it's to address a set of recently expiring statutes relating to the disclosure of youth records, and there are a bunch of lawsuits about that as well. So part of that confidentiality law expired July 1. The state Supreme Court had to get involved to revive the statutes to give lawmakers some time to get back to the Capitol and address this issue. So the concern is that access to youth court documents would be more difficult to obtain with agencies and courts kind of having well, I'll tell you what Caleb Sailors called it, just looking at his terminology, ambiguous understanding of what can legally be shared. So that's going on today, 3 o'clock in the Capitol. We're going to be interested in seeing what the outcome of that is. Is this going to be a day-long deal? They get all their business done today? Or might they be required to return for future or more sessions, I should say, in the coming days to get this thing hammered out? Hopefully they can put this to bed and take the appropriate action that the governor also sees is fit to address this issue. And I know Child Protection Services, our legal systems, our youth courts, judiciary, they're involved as well. They are stakeholders, of course, and are providing needed input into the process. In a recent survey, 53% of Americans say they eat in their car at least once a week. The average American does it about 3 times a week. That's according to a study conducted by research from One Poll. And this was done on behalf of St. Pierre, a Texas-based bakery. They say most people do that they eat in their car just in the interest of time. Some say convenience, because it's peaceful to eat alone. Okay? I think also because, look, our landscape is littered with fast food establishments, and we're a little unique in that, right? In the world. I mean, and most
yes and no. I mean, the concept of a drive-through fast food establishment, yeah, that's pretty American.
Okay.
You don't usually see those in large numbers in other countries. If you do, it's a rare occurrence, and it's usually like a tourist trap kind of area.
Okay.
But the concept of fast food without the drive-through, just walk-up fast food,
yeah,
that wasn't started by McDonald's or the brothers he bought the brand from. That wasn't started by White Castle or whoever you'd want to say is the original, anybody at Coney Island. There's remnants of fast food stalls preserved in Pompeii, the Vesuvius covered in ash and preserved.
Huh.
That's something that's thousands of years old. Because if you think about even in early civilizations, you have high population density, tiny living spaces. You don't have the modern convenience of a hot plate you can plug in. So if you're in the middle of summer and you don't want your little hovel to be burning up hot, you go to the local stall and get you some gruel.
So folks who were involved in the study said that this is a habit shaped by busy schedules, and that lunch, I don't think there's any surprise there, is the most popular meal that folks eat in their cars. And to your point, I remember the first McDonald's opened up in the, I believe, 60s in Mississippi on Highway 80 near Terry Road, Battlefield Park, that area. If you're familiar with the city of Jackson, that would be in southwest Jackson, if you will, a couple of miles from Jackson State University. And that restaurant with the golden arches that like went through the building is what they were known for. No indoor dining. And to your point, it was a walk-up window. You placed your order one window and you got it out of another, and then you just drove off or sat in your car and ate, whichever you preferred. But, yeah, I think it was a little bit after that, right, where, as you say, the concept of the drive-through became popular. And, I mean, that litters our landscape. And now we got all this fancy electronic stuff as well, including the ability to order via your mobile device and drive through and give them a number or a code and then move on forward. And that is actually I find that to be convenient, especially since the tool can store your last orders, your history, and you can just pick one out and say, I want to do that again. That's pretty convenient. Couple of taps. You show up and give them the number. Okay, pull up. Boom, you've already paid. Here's your food, and you're on your way. We're taking a break. In the Element Wealth studio, it's Leah Long with NFIB at 11:05.
Hello, I'm Sean.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. In other news, of course, the United States is hammering Iran with a fresh wave of attacks. I believe the president, is he not announced, Rhino? He's going to address the nation tomorrow night. He hasn't told us exactly what he's going to speak about that I've seen. He's teased it a bit, but I don't know exactly what the
scuttlebutt is that he is going to announce, after an investigation into the 2020 elections in the state of Georgia, that the two elected senators were illegitimately elected.
Oh, yeah. I have seen those two senators, say something about that. Senator
the
Ossoff.
Democrats put out a social media post where it was a picture of them and it just said, duly elected.
Oh, okay.
They're so smart.
Oh my gosh! So that is that's at least what the rumor is.
That's what the quote unquote sources are saying.
Yeah, and that would be, of course, Senators Ossoff and Warnock. Yeah. So that's interesting. Of course, both are Democrats representing what traditionally has been a red state. And has a Republican government within the state government. So we'll see what happens there. I honestly thought it was going to be something that kind of lent itself to the midterms with those on the horizon, and there being, of course, concerns. And by the way, the watching the prediction markets, Kalshi and Poly Market. I think I got this right, Rhino. You can bet on the 4 different potential outcomes for the Congress, those being, and the one that I think is the most likely in terms of the percentage as far as the betting is concerned. I think it's 48%. Republicans lose the House, maintain the Senate. That is considered the most probable outcome as far as the prediction market betting. And then there is, I think you go below that, and it's, I think I get this right, the Democrats take over the Senate but lose the House. And then it's Republicans keep both, and then Democrats flip both. Kind of in that order, I believe, the probabilities. Did I get that right?
The current odds on Kalshi are 46% for a Democrat House, Democrat Senate, 37% Democrat House, Republican Senate, 18% Republican House, Republican Senate, and 1.7% Republican House, Democrat Senate.
So I got the first two backwards. I apologize for that. So to say that again, the highest probability outcome?
The highest probability is a sweep for the Dems.
Really?
At 46% on Kalshi.
Okay. Maybe it's Polymarket I looked at. I think it had the highest probability of Dems flipping the House, Republicans keeping the Senate. I think when I looked at that this morning, that was like 48%. But I find it just fascinating that you can bet on this, right? That really is incredible that's even possible with these prediction markets. But so that just kind of made me think that when I read that, maybe that's what the president is going to talk about, is just something related to the midterms to give kind of a boost to his party. There is a midterm convention, if you will, coming up in September in Dallas. I don't know that such an event's ever been held. It's somewhat modeled after the national convention, of course. I don't know that we've ever had that before. The national convention where the party nominates its presidential ticket. I don't know that we've had that before, but that's coming up in September. I think September 9th, 10th, 11th time frame. That should be interesting, what we got there in Dallas. I suspect that would be well attended. I think that's just to generate excitement and energy and really get the message out, because, all the major news outlets will be covering, and boost, of course, donations into those campaigns. In fact, I saw this morning that with respect to contributions into the Republican Party for the midterms, who's the guy that just said he's going to give $40 million? The billionaire Ken Griffin. Yeah, Ken Griffin, $40 million. Just announced that. He says, I'm able to fully fund these races because of my steady investment cycle over cycle. So this is interesting. Ken Griffin, $40 million. He's worth an estimated $50 billion, so I think he'll be fine after he cuts these checks. But he's going to be dumping a bunch of money into these races for Republicans. That's interesting that that's going on. The Congress has taken a huge step, the House at least, toward making daylight saving time permanent. Now it sits in the Senate. And interestingly enough, the airline industry has issued a statement. I don't know if you've seen that, but they have concerns about just making whatever adjustments they have to with respect to operating an airline. And so this is like the Airlines for America, like their association, that issued a statement concerning conversion to permanent daylight saving time. They said it would have considerable implications for aviation, including passenger disruption, crew and aircraft positioning, and domestic and international connectivity issues. Airlines operate expansive, interconnected domestic and global networks that are reliant on stability and predictability. Any changes would need an implementation timeline that reflects these global complications. Seems like a bit of overkill to me. I mean, passenger disruption? Like changing the clocks doesn't cause passenger disruption. How many people you think?
Yeah, if you didn't have any disruptions due to the way the time was the day before it changes, I'm fairly certain leaving it that way is not going to cause an issue. Plus, they don't, if they're talking about international flights, very few, if any, countries change their clocks like this. Yeah. So it's not like it's mattered to them in international travel anyways.
It was over my head when I read that statement.
And it would be one thing if this were the 1940s and you had a bank full of people called computers doing the scheduling.
Exactly right.
But we literally have these boxes that I guess seem like magic to some of these old farts that you put the numbers in and they change automatically.
It seems like just, thinking from an electronic systems perspective, it's a whole hell of a lot harder to affect the twice a year change than it is no change, right? Just set it up and say, don't change it anymore. Man, I don't know. I thought that was overkill. And then there's some people that want standard time. And I mean, you would think every disease known to man is caused by changing the clocks when you look at all of their various grievances. Of course, we're getting to the point where data centers are the cause of every disease. No, man. So, but it got approved.
Almost like over-emotional, neurotic people are just going to say whatever makes them feel good and not really give a rat's rear end about reality.
They just find a target and boom, they just go right at it. 308 to 117, that was the vote in the United States House that would cement daylight saving time as the year-round clock-keeping, time-keeping standard. It now sits in the U.S. Senate. The president supports this. Now, I remember during the campaign, Rhino, I actually, if we're going to set it to 1, I prefer daylight saving time, what looks like is likely to happen. But remember, initially the president had it backwards, and then I think somebody said, oh, no, sir, that's not what we're looking for. Oh, yeah, you're right. That's the one I want. So we're on track now. We'll see what happens. I have a chart, by the way, that I saw that shows when the sun would rise and set in the various months of the year in Mississippi. We'll get to that after the break in the Element Wealth studio.
From the CK, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You turned me on. Don't you ever stop, I'm here with you. Now it's all or nothing, 'cause you said you follow through. You follow me, and I follow. What you gonna do when the baby's gone? What you gonna do when it all backs up? What you gonna do when the love comes down? What you gonna do when the flames go up? Who's gonna come and turn the tide?
That might be one of my favorite videos from the height of the music video era. Simple Minds, Alive and Kicking. Great tune, too. Great drums in that song. So if daylight saving time becomes permanent, I certainly welcome the extra hours, the extra time of daylight in the afternoons during the winter. I appreciate that, applaud that. I super enjoy it in the summer when we're on daylight saving time, and that may not be your position, but I certainly do. I like that idea. But I remember when we converted to this in the name of running out of oil. And this was back in the 70s, and the theory was, well, if we had more daylight in the winter, we'd use lights less and thus consume less electricity and maybe use electric heat. Electric heat was a lot more common back then than gas-powered heat. But what I do remember is it causing problems in the mornings in the winter because the sun rises at a later time. And that was particularly challenging for school children, boarding the buses and just riding to school and so forth. So according to the information that I was able to glean, sunrise in January in Mississippi on average would be 8:03 a.m. if daylight saving time became permanent. But the sunset would be 6:08. So it's the hour, just shifted is all it is. But just to give you some idea, folks, that the sun would rise at 8 o'clock in the morning, which means most people that have to be at work at 8 or school at 8, you're traveling in the dark, you're showing up in the dark. 7:41 a.m. in February, so of course the earth is tilting and the days are getting a bit longer. And the sunset in February, this is kind of cool, 6:39. I like that. 7:06 a.m. in March, sunrise. 7:04 p.m. sunset. And then typically, of course, daylight saving time kicks in sometime in March. And the rest of it is of course, the way it is now. But November, December, usually November is when we shift to standard time. So November, 7:30 a.m. sunrise, December, 7:56, and then January, 8:03. So it's that sunrise that I am concerned about. For the record, I don't mind the time change. It doesn't bother me. I kind of think it makes sense. That's just me. That's my opinion. However, if we're going to convert to one, because a lot of people just really get upset and about having to change the clocks twice a year, I do prefer that we convert to daylight saving time year-round. So we'll see what happens. The president says he will sign legislation, should it make it to his desk, that would make this permanent. It's all up to the old Senate, those wily senators.
Which means it's likely not going anywhere.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking as well. I don't.
Because you'll have some worthless Democrat senator come out and say it disproportionately impacts people of color or women or trans or whatever.
Yeah. No doubt.
And then the necessary Democrat senators peeling off to actually pass it would be pressured into not voting for it because it allegedly disproportionately impacts people of color, women, or trans.
And you're leaving out the other aspect. It's something Trump wants, so we can't support anything Trump wants. It's crazy how polarized we've gotten and how just obsessive and petulant, honestly, they have gotten about that. Interesting. The Democrat Socialists of America, you saw they had like a convention over the weekend or something, and so not only is the Democrat Party fractured between, I guess what you could call more traditional Democrats, if there are any, and this Democrat Socialist far left wing, but even within the DSA, they don't seem to be able to get along very well. There was some talk about endorsing that. They want you to know they're not a party. They're just a movement. There was some talk about endorsing AOC for president, but they got into an argument about the fact that some believe that she's not anti-Israel and pro-Palestine. Really, it seems like the DSA movement, that's like the litmus test, right? You got to.
It's a coalition of all the dumbest people you've ever seen trying to put their stamp on the world of politics.
It is incredible. Just looking at some of that stuff. If you hadn't heard about their platform and I know I went through some of it the other day on Monday, but they want to eliminate the U.S. Senate, and they want to replace the president and the court with executives and judges chosen by and subordinate to the people, or something to Congress. To Congress, excuse me. Yeah.
Which would just be the House if they do away with the Senate.
That's right. They just want to vote for a House, elect a House, and the House picks the judiciary, and the House picks a chief executive, if you will. They want to defund our military completely, the Department of War. Of course, they want to defund ICE, and and they're extremes. They want to end all incarceration and just empty out the jails, and of course,
like I said, a coalition of the dumbest people you ever see.
Grant amnesty to all illegals. It truly is incredible.
The kind of people too stupid to pour whiz out of a boot with instructions written on the heel.
My dad, one of his favorite sayings, no doubt about it. So the Jackson City Council, they have voted to pause data centers and data center development in the city of Jackson. In other words, in my opinion, Rhino, they just hung up a big closed for business sign in the city of Jackson. If there is a community, specifically a city, that needs business investment and economic development in the state of Mississippi, it would be the state's capital city, the city of Jackson. And they just shut it down. I'm telling you, this does send a powerful signal not only to data center developers, but other potential business prospects. I don't think they could put that two and two together, honestly.
No, because in the same breath, they'll complain that cities and suburbs around the area are seeing developments and seeing growth in both the tax base and the economy, and they'll blame it on something stupid like racism or the Republicans.
And thanks for bringing that up, because that's exactly what came to me, is that you're basically being surrounded, because we have Clinton to their west with an AWS investment there. As you know, they're retrofitting the Packard Electric building there, the plant there. You've got Avio in Rankin County to their east, to the north. Of course, you've got the AWS projects. I mean, the South Campus in Ridgeland is literally on the county line, the line that separates Madison County from Hinds County in the city of Jackson. So they're being surrounded, and you're right. They'll complain about all this newfound revenue that will be pouring in, say, to the Clinton School District, for example, the city of Clinton, the county of Hinds, and then in Rankin County, the Rankin County School District, the same deal, Brandon and the county. And then in Madison, it's the Canton and Madison Public School District, the county of Madison, cities of Canton and Rankin. Bunch of new revenue coming in. And they'll get mad. Oh, they're getting richer, and they're getting this, and they're getting... You know what they'll do? They'll go to the legislature and say, you guys got to give us more money. Right? And where's that money come from? The other counties. That's where it comes, the residents in those counties. So it's hard to feel sorry for them in this case. You just essentially rejected the very thing that you need to try to pull the city out of the doldrums. And you got goofy Kathy Hochul in the state of New York issued a moratorium EO yesterday. Boy, Tommy Tuberville just read her the riot act on that. So did John Fetterman. Good for him. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Like a starlight
I know there's a lot of people that would say with respect to this time change deal, let's just split the difference and do it 30 minutes. But that's still a change. I think the goal here is to stop changing. So whether you're changing an hour or 30 minutes, you're still changing. And that gets a lot of people upset. They don't like the idea of changing. Like I said, it doesn't bother me. I don't and all these reports about heart attacks and all that stuff, I mean, have they not ever flown between time zones on an airplane? I mean, does that increase your risk of a heart attack?
I'm sure you could find a statistically significant enough number to make it say whatever you really want it to say, but yeah, it's not that big a deal.
I don't think so either. But that's where we stand. By the way, with respect to Governor Kathy Hochul of the Empire State of New York, who just signed the EO on data centers, Senator John Fetterman, who's become more reasonable by the day, he opposes the moratorium, and he termed Hochul's policy as, quote, China first. Good for him, Senator Fetterman. Tuberville, he was on the Business Channel yesterday, the senator from our neighbor to the east, Alabama. Looks like he's destined to be the governor of the great state of Alabama. Man, he went off on a rant, too, on the Business Channel yesterday, Rhino, and he said, send all them billionaires to Alabama. Send the data centers, too. We'll take them all. Do they not realize how much revenue this means to the state and jobs and other opportunities? And by the way, an example, we've talked about this before, that everybody gets focused on, well, they don't create that many permanent jobs. Well, you know what? Building roads and interstates don't either. But they're pretty critical for all the businesses that use them. Is that some second-order thinking that's required here?
Well, especially when you look at the Jackson moratorium, because if, in fact, data centers do employ a small number of people, that would be a selling point to put one in Jackson, because you would have to have some form of security for the employees in Jackson. And security for 40 people is a lot cheaper than security for 4,000.
That's a good point. Well, you remember when we were building railroads, we were traversing our country, connecting the east and the west with railroads, right? You remember there were some cities that said, oh, no railroads here, right? Look what happened. The cities that embraced those railroads, they grew, they flourished, they boomed. And the cities that said no, they didn't. They died. This is similar. This is modern-day railroads. This is modern-day transportation infrastructure, except instead of moving vehicles such as a train or a car or a truck, you're moving data at light speed. You don't think that's critical to human life these days? Well, then disconnect and see what your life's like. Well, that's crazy. That's not going to happen. The point is, this can be done in a responsible, ethical manner. We can pursue this progress and development of this technology while being good stewards of the environment. And I'm proud of the way we handle this in Mississippi, and in particular in Madison County, because it was the first and it became the springboard. But this announcement the governor made last week, Rhino, Jabil, the factory up in Marshall County, I believe, that's going to be manufacturing infrastructure for data centers. Well, they located there because it's the site was good for what they're doing, but it's close to their customers. It's no different than when Nissan moved up in Canton. It was subsequently surrounded by suppliers just to cut the time involved and the cost associated with delivering. Just-in-time manufacturing was a concept born, 30, 40 years ago to try to just cut costs. And having these vertically integrated supply chains. Well, this company, by the way, if you look at what they make, their primary product is something called a PDU, a power distribution unit. And these are just big wiring centers and harnesses and devices that aggregate all the electrical wiring to distribute that.
Supersized gang plug.
That's exactly right. Well, guess who's probably going to buy most of what they make? Amazon in Madison County. That's permanent jobs, 2,000. Fox News, SuperTalk News, then Lee Long with the NFI Bays. Stay with us.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this Hump Day. We welcome now Leah Long, National Federation of Independent Small Business, the director for Mississippi and Louisiana. Hey, Leah, good to see you again.
Hey, thanks for having me on today.
Well, we got a fairly benign inflation report. We actually had a little disinflation between the month of May and June. I don't think anybody saw that coming necessarily. So that was some relatively good news on the inflation front, though we're still hovering around a 3.5, 3.6% annualized inflation. But has that been anything that you've heard discussed within the circles of your members?
Yeah, so of course some members are feeling inflation more than others depending on the industry, but kind of like you said, it's kind of a medium report right now. It has went down. Our optimism index, it did increase just a little bit. Like you said, it has a lot to do, we talked about fuel prices. I think last time when I was on here, they were kind of skyrocketed, and those are kind of leveled out. So it definitely has increased optimism for our business owners and just the operating cost internally for them.
Yeah. Well, I would think so as well. So we had new laws go into effect, as you know, in the state of Mississippi. I don't know that there were too many, Leah, that would be significant for small and mid-sized businesses. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there were a couple ag farm bills, the sales tax bill, but in reality, there really wasn't a ton done this last session for small business owners. You know, we did a lot of workforce bills, and those went into play, but those aren't, just change things overnight. It takes a little bit of time. And I always talk about the issue for some of our small business owners is labor quality. And so 32% in the last month reported that they had job openings they couldn't fill. But as these new bills, go start July 1, and we start building on workforce and getting a higher skilled workforce in Mississippi, hopefully that number will continue to go down.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good. And as you know, that we're in the process of eliminating the income tax in the state of Mississippi this year. All taxable income above $10,000 is taxed at a flat rate of 4%. That will fall to 3.75, and then in quarter point next year, and then in quarter point increments over the subsequent 3 years, and then based on achievement of certain calculated triggers, I should say. We'll keep on whittling away at it over a 10-year period. But overall, I would think businesses got to be happy about what I think is a very business-friendly tax environment, certainly here in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a huge win a couple years ago when the state determined they were going to be fiscally responsible, which I love saying that because I think Mississippi, obviously doing Louisiana, I obviously get to compare both states every session. But they've stayed fiscally responsible, and that's a goal moving forward to lower that personal income tax rate because that affects our members greatly. It affects most of all of them. And so lowering that obviously means more money into their business they can reinvest. We always talk about compensation for business for of their employees, reinvest in that aspect of it. So as we continue, hopefully that path goes down to zero. It'll continue to make us one of the best states in the South, always competing with everyone else here. So I'm hopeful that that continues to happen.
Okay. Well, that's good news. And then on the federal level, we're a year and a week, I guess, into the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which didn't significantly change things for small, mid-sized businesses, except the restoration of 100% immediate expensing, which I still believe was a big thing. But the tax rates stayed the same. However, had that not happened and we'd have fallen back to the Obama-era tax environment, that would have been devastating, I believe, for the economy and small businesses in particular.
Absolutely. Of course, you just said that, and the 20% small business deduction, which was put in that, huge. If that wouldn't have passed, it would have wiped out 9 out of 10 businesses. I mean, they're automatically hit with a 20% tax hike. And so they're thankful in that, which I think that definitely did increase optimism, kind of started back. I think it was funny a year ago in a week. That's crazy. We're already moved past. It seemed like we were just talking about that yesterday on this show. And so they can kind of plan for their future on that. That's made permanent. And so we thank Congress, President Trump for doing that. That was one of our top issues. NFIB worked on it, and top issues for our membership moving into that.
You know, the Congress is talking about a reconciliation 3.0, but at this point it doesn't look like something that I was hoping they would include in it, which is indexing capital gains to inflation. I know that that's been talked about quite a bit, but latest reports don't seem to suggest that will be incorporated. I think that could also be a huge benefit, not only to just the average person, but certainly small businesses as well.
Absolutely, and I agree. You know, kind of reports saying it may not get included in that, but it would be a benefit for our business owners if that could get included. And
what, of course, the Democrats want to do is tax capital gains at ordinary income rates. And if that were to happen from a small business perspective, you know, folks that literally pour their lives into building a business, and then they have an opportunity to monetize that effort by selling their business, if they had to pay ordinary income taxes on those gains, they'd be paying 40-50% when you combine state taxes to the government for their hard work.
Absolutely. And that's kind of just devastating to the business owner that spent their life doing that business, just like you said, had their dream, built it. And, you know, at the end of the day, they kind of got slapped back in their face almost for everything that they had built. So, you know, definitely hoping that does not happen.
What are your members telling you about labor? What does that look like?
So right now, we're just kind of talking about that it's the quality. It's a labor quality issue. We're not only in Mississippi, everywhere around. And so there has been a lot of, you know, investment into Workforce Mississippi and just, you know, nationwide. And so I think as we continue to build on that, you've got to have workforce, you got to have labor. We got to keep those jobs in Mississippi, and there's jobs to be had. And so, of course, I love to say you should always get a job in a small business because it's like a family environment. But we got to make sure that we keep that in Mississippi and keep building on that. You can't there's no silver bullet. We can't just do a bill one session and not continue to build on that for the years to come.
You know, here in Mississippi, we have a great organization, Accelerate Mississippi, that focuses on upskilling and just preparing our workforce for jobs that are available now and will be required in the future. I think we're sort of leading the nation to a great extent in that department, and there's lots of folks that participate in that. Have you heard from your members that it's been valuable to them?
It has been, just depending what industry you're in, whether you're in construction, skilled workers, and that's a big thing. You know, we always need workers in construction, transportation. I think on the break you were talking about, you know, building roads. I mean, we've got to have people skilled, able to do that. And, you know, if we don't have roads, we don't have businesses, we can't survive. And so I think that's a good point to make, that whether what industry you're in, of course, we represent every type of industry in Mississippi, but when it comes to those skilled worker jobs, transportation, you know, construction, welding, you've got to have a certain skill set, and that program is definitely helping put people in the right direction to be able to get those jobs.
Yeah, shout out to Dr. Courtney Taylor. She heads the Accelerate Mississippi organization, and they just seem to be booming, honestly, and have established partnerships with the hyperscalers that are investing heavily in the state of Mississippi to ensure that folks are trained to do the jobs that they need to place in these facilities. These are permanent jobs. You got that going on in Louisiana as well. I saw recently that Meta, it looks like they're going to increase their investment in Richland Parish there up to $50 billion. But Leah, that somebody leaked because some of the credible business news sources said $250 billion.
Yeah,
you've seen that, right?
Different numbers. I did see that. So whatever it may be, we're super happy that they are. And I know we kind of talked about the different things going on in the states, and there may be people coming from Mississippi to work and bid on those jobs. So I love to say we're state lines, and so for both of my states, as long as we continue workforce and having jobs, makes me happy.
Well, they report that they have spent $1.6 billion with Louisiana businesses as part of this project.
Most of them. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the businesses were local, independently, bidded jobs, and I think that's important too.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're seeing the same thing happen here in central Mississippi. Reports we got at Makita indicate some 88 Mississippi-based businesses are receiving contract work from the AWS project, which is just fantastic.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's how it should be. It's how we keep money in Mississippi.
100%. Lee, appreciate you joining us, and thanks for your insight. You take care. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you.
We're coming right back in the Element Well studio. Please stay with us.
This program. Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news.
Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, we appreciate Leah Long. She is the director for Mississippi and Louisiana for the National Federation of Independent Small Business, joining us and giving us an update from the small business community. Overall, the attitude seems to be pretty positive among businesses. I do think this inflation report, the president's certainly touting that and taking a bit of a victory lap. The question is it sustainable? Because now we got oil creeping back up. Because the disinflation, again, to be distinguished from deflation, disinflation just means that prices didn't rise as much as they did in the past, previously. Deflation means prices went down. Now, we did have deflation between May and June. The report came in showing a negative adjustment to the CPI between May and June. So that's the result of price decreases, largely the price of fuel. Again, as you know, the price drop once the Strait somewhat reopened, at least, and the supply of oil increased, and we saw the price of oil. We talk about it almost every day on the show. The price came down, and so you saw the price at the pump moderate somewhat as well. Thus, deflation month to month. But year over year, we still are experiencing price increases. That's inflation, but the rate of increases is coming down. That's disinflation. So that's kind of what the scenario. It's an unusual scenario, but we had a deflationary situation month over month, but disinflation year over year. Still are dealing with inflation overall at about 3.5%, pardon me. So that's above the Fed's target of 2%. for what that's worth. However, this Fed chairman, as you know, Rhino, is kind of got a different approach on that, a different philosophy on that, and it's more about the macroeconomic indicators, not just inflation, with respect to making monetary policy. So the prediction markets and the futures markets are all saying, yeah, probably not going to get a rate increase in July, which is good news. Probably not going to get a rate decrease either. Just hold steady, as has been the practice for some time now, I guess you could say. You know, tomorrow it's Palmer Home for Children, the 14th annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Every year there are children across Mississippi that need a loving home, and many times these children are caught in unimaginable circumstances. That's why we need your help. You'll learn how Palmer Home for Children serves vulnerable children. It's a faith-based organization that doesn't take government money. That's why we need your help. We want you to tune in and join us for the 14th annual Palmer Home for Children Radiothon happening tomorrow here on SuperTalk Mississippi. That's a 6-to-6 deal. And we are going to hit our fundraising goals, and thus tomorrow afternoon, we're getting the razor and the clippers out and getting rid of that hair and beard that Rhino is sporting and start it all over again. Looking forward to that. Always a lot of fun. The folks are great. And, of course, the best part to me, as we've said, Rhino, is when we see those kids just being kids, walking around with a spring in their step, smiles on their faces, eating lunch right there in the room where we're set up, playing with the other kids. It's just fun to see that because, you know, in the background there's a background there that wasn't as happy, likely. So it's good to see that they've got stability and happiness, which that's what kids deserve, and it's what develops children into good, successful, productive, law-abiding adults. It's when they live in a thriving environment, nurturing, loving environment as a child. And so God bless Palmer Home for Children. This is, of course, SuperTalk Mississippi's chosen big philanthropy, and we'll be there tomorrow. All of us, right? We got morning, we got Rebecca, we got middays, we got sports. We're going to be rocking and rolling. All the folks will be there. Come by and see us in DeSoto County. If you are in the area, we'd love to see you. So on the C Spire text line, hey, Gerard, Marshall, and Lauderdale. Concerning data centers, do we need one on every damn corner? I know we utilize them and they're a necessity, but what's with the explosion? Is IT inoperable? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Marshall. Now, I don't get it. I'm old. Maybe that's the reason, but I'm afraid the purpose is not 100% benevolent. I hear you, but just wanted to share some data with you, Marshall. First, with respect to the country. The country consists of 2.26 billion acres, and some 4 million are currently being used by data centers. That's 0.17% of the land in this country. It's nothing. It's a fraction. The same is true in the state of Mississippi. We have 31 million acres. Our state is comprised of 31 million acres. About 6,000 are used in the state of Mississippi for the 7 data center campuses at various stages of construction right now. That, too, is a teeny tiny fraction of the total land. I just want to point that out first. But to answer your question, it's because we keep finding more uses of these cloud-based services, and because we keep producing and consuming more content. The new applications, they generate new content. That's not even taking into consideration existing tools, existing applications, existing workloads that just keep generating more content. They need more compute horsepower. They need more storage. They need more networking, all the above. And that's what these data centers do. It's kind of like you're house shopping and you're looking at the closets to make sure that they'll suit your lifestyle. Oh, I'll never use all this closet space. And then about 2 months later, the closets are all full. What are we going to do? And you start rummaging, and those just end up somebody else's closets or in the trash dump a lot of times. But I hear you. The good news is innovators keep inventing more uses of information technology, whether it's artificial intelligence, quantum computing, new functionality and features and cloud services. Think, for example, about the apps on your smartphone. How many you had in 2007 when the iPhone was invented? A couple of screens, maybe? And now it's just screen after screen after screen. It's every day there's new apps. And all those apps require compute, they require storage, they require networking. That's just the consumer aspect of things. And there's business uses as well, because you got a lot of businesses that service their consumers. Banks would be a common example. So, so that's the deal, Marshall, is that we are the reason, we users are the reason that we have this explosion of data centers. We just keep using more applications, producing more content. And the other thing, Rhino, as you know, is more rich content. Everybody walks around with TikTok, and all that's videos. That's rich content. Why is that important? That needs more horsepower, needs more compute, more networking, more bandwidth, more storage.
A great example is streaming, like, for example, Netflix. If you were streaming a Netflix show or movie a decade ago, it was going to be at DVD quality. And the amount of data stored on a DVD for a movie, if it's double layer, is 8.5 gigabytes. For a current high-definition streaming movie, say it's 2 hours long, on Netflix, you're looking at anywhere between 20 and 50 gigabytes. So between 2 and 5 times the difference in just data for that one movie for you to watch on Netflix. Multiply that times the millions of people using Netflix, and you need a bigger pipe to get all the movies down.
And more storage to store, because higher quality video content takes more space. It's more bits involved in it, is the bottom line. So, and none of that ever goes away. We just keep adding to it. Nobody wants their history erased. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Love is but a song we sing, feels the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the wing, and you may not know why.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. John in Ridgeland said that McDonald's I was talking about, Highway 80 at Valley Street, I thought it was Terry Road. John, I think may have been in the block between Terry and Valley Street there. But yeah, it was Highway 80. I do remember that. And that's where you had to walk up to order. No drive-through and no in-store dining there. Let's see. Jerry in Waynesboro, this is when we were talking about the daylight saving time issue, said, why not split it? Because the goal is to stop changing the clocks. It's not 30 minutes versus an hour. It's changing clocks versus not. So that's really the objective of moving to daylight saving time permanently, is to avoid the ritual twice a year of springing forward and falling backward. Tim from Poplarville says, if you think about it, Jackson has really been closed for business for quite a while. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, Tim, but it's just somewhat disappointing to see that here's an opportunity. Here's an opportunity for the city to receive a significant investment that would provide so much benefit, far outweighing the negatives, but not seeing fit to do so. It seemed like that what looks to me to be a small number of people, now they may represent a larger number, but as far as those who showed up at these various protests and meetings, that really influence this decision quite a bit. Kathy from Tupelo says, what are the pros and cons of data centers? It's really a question that is better structured around this, Kathy. What are the benefits of what data centers provide as opposed to, and then there's the benefit of the data center themselves. And so that's really the way I think we have to look at this. But we'll start by, it powered that text you sent us that actually flowed through. Could have been multiple data centers, honestly. So this situation we have in our culture and our society where we're accustomed to instant communication, instant information is powered by all of the IT infrastructure that is housed within the data centers. The specific benefit of data center facilities and buildings is just that they have an aggregation of connectivity. Just look at the external connection there. So lots of wires. It's fiber that are installed and routed into those buildings. And the reason Mississippi is a good location for locating data centers is because, man, back in the 70s when the carriers were installing fiber across the U.S. landscape, really as a way to carry voice traffic initially, not really thinking much about the future application of data, but it was voice, and it was the telecom companies. And fiber was being planted all over the place, and it just turns out that we're at a crossroads, just like we are with respect to our interstates, 55 and 20. And, of course, 55 from South Louisiana all the way up to Chicago, St. Louis, Memphis, and points in between, and then 20 goes across the country. But that route certainly between Atlanta and Dallas, a lot of commerce. 10, I used to laugh that when I was working in California and I lived in New Orleans, I flew back and forth all the time as part of my work, but if I were to drive, I could stop at one red light where I lived in Metairie, hop on 10, and not see another red light till I got to Los Angeles, literally like that. So I'm kind of digressing a bit. I get it, but it was all to explain that we have this abundance of fiber. And so fiber equals connectivity, equals bandwidth, equals more capacity to move data around. And what data centers do is they aggregate that connectivity. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is we expect all this stuff we use every day, all these computers we use and mobile devices to always work 100% of the time. I'm not saying that's unreasonable. I think that's a good thing. Well, to ensure that sort of reliability, you need facilities that are purpose-built to house the equipment and the software that delivers that reliability. And data centers, they're concrete structures. And honestly, going back to the 90s, when I built the first data center in 2000 in the state of Mississippi, the commercial data center, and it's in the JSU East Center, by the way, which is a very hardened facility, and it's on the bottom floor. It's kind of right on the ground, if not partially below ground. That's actually better from being resistant to natural disasters. And by the way, it's set up on a hill, so the risk of flood was very low as well, which is a problem in our state. Rains a lot, especially in the city of Jackson. But these hardened facilities, I always thought we're not ever going to get any major data center investments here because tornadoes are a problem. Wind is a problem. Hurricanes are a problem in Mississippi. But as you know, Rhino, smart people have figured out a way to build buildings that can handle up to 250-mile-an-hour wind load. We could do that in the 90s. You just couldn't afford it. We figured out a way to do it at a viable cost. And that's why to a great extent, we've seen this explosion. So you know what happens is, with respect to IT geeks, is that you give me more capability, more capacity, more compute, more network, more storage, I'm going to dream up more stuff people can use. And then that starts consuming it, and then they come up with more. And it's a cat and mouse game that's been going on in the information technology space since it was essentially invented in the 40s. Computers, I say. Is that hardware folks come up with more powerful hardware with more capacity, and the software people immediately fill it up, and the hardware people respond and say, okay, well, here's more, and they fill it. That's been going on for decades. That's nothing new. And that's where we are. We keep dreaming up more uses of information technology. That's a good thing. Every day. Here's an example. The prediction markets. How long has that stuff been around?
A couple of years, but not that long.
2 years, though. That's not very long in the scheme of history. But, of course, those are all powered by data centers. That's an example. Across the world, by the way. You think about now in healthcare. My gosh, the information technology that we have in healthcare, everything from PACS systems for radiology and X-rays and MRIs and CTs and all that sort of stuff is completely digitized and electronic. Way better than walking around with all them sheets all over the place and filling up rooms, right, of file folders with all. That's just one teeny tiny example of what we're talking about. So we keep dreaming up new uses, new applications. And it's cross-industry. It's not unique to any one industry. It's every industry. Who now doesn't have access to their bank account on their phone and can do all their banking transactions without ever walking in a bank? You can manage your investment portfolio. I remember the days you had to call a broker who you paid a fee. Go buy me some stock. Sell me some stock. That went away. Trades, free. And the reason is because we've created so much wealth with the technology that's powered, some second-order thinking here now, by these data centers that just in that industry, stockbrokers evolved into wealth managers. Well, there wasn't enough wealth to manage back in the stockbroker days, but now there is because of all this mainly American innovation and technology that's made us all wealthier. I'm not exaggerating here, Emma. I know you're shaking your head no, so the folks will know. I just want to make sure that you don't see me out. You keep me in check. But that's exactly what's happened. That's just one example of how things have evolved. A lot more on that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Jolly Up a Mississippi.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back in the Element Wealth studio. So to just kind of round out your question there, Kathy, you want to know what the cons are. So I hope you understand that the pros are, I mean, these facilities power the tools, the platforms, the applications, the workloads that are used in every aspect of our life, every aspect in every industry. Before data centers, which became possible and viable because of, we were talking about earlier, the installation of all that fiber. And here's why. If a company wanted to install IT systems, let's just say back in some of the early applications, just to handle their back office functions, their accounting functions, well, you would buy a computer and software, and you would install it on your premises. Some large companies, just take a bank, for example, they would have an operations center. That's really a data center is what it was. Small relative to today's because they housed mainframes that had limited functionality to just do the bank's basic transaction processing. Proof your checks, to update your check accounts, and then once a month you get a piece of paper in the mail that said, here's the checks you wrote and the deposits you made. And you didn't know unless you went to a bank and stood in line and got to a teller and said, can you tell me what my bank balance is? Right? Can you tell me if these checks have cleared? And they would share one terminal installed in the branch. Oh, I got to wait for the other teller. I'm not exaggerating here. I was involved in bank automation in the 80s and 90s. That's how it used to work. So think about that now. You don't have to go to a bank and wait in line to see a teller and say, can you tell me what my bank balance is? It's instant. In the palm of your hand, anywhere in the world. That's made possible by data centers. But where I was going with this is companies, organizations would purchase computers and software, and a solution, a system, and they would install it on their premises because there wasn't any connectivity available to transmit that data at a speed where it was usable. And as we figured out how to install fiber optics, especially when we figured out a way to handle fiber optic cabling without looking at it wrong and spoiling it, again, advances in technology. And you know who did that? Corning, the people who make glass, because it's glass. They make fiber. They're benefiting tremendously from this data center explosion. Corning is. And then we had the guys at Stanford that ultimately founded Cisco Systems, a male and female professor, their name escapes me, but they came up with this idea of routing, and they invented and developed the Internetworking Operating System, iOS. And it really is just a way to efficiently move data around between networks. That's why it's called Internetworking Operating System. And that evolved into what is Cisco Systems. And Cisco Systems started making routers that the average business could afford. And what would they use those for? Connecting to other locations within the business, sometimes in the early days through private connections as the telecom carriers began offering more advanced, affordable bandwidth-type circuits. So all this just keeps evolving at the same time. So where I'm going with this is, wow, now we have all this fiber. all this networking power, and we figured out how to make servers and storage way smaller and way more powerful, I should say, and with more capacity. It makes sense to concentrate all that into a hardened facility that's focused on just housing and managing and administering and protecting data systems, as opposed to every business out there trying to do it on their own and not doing very good at and not having the resources.
Basically, to boil it down for the end user, the end consumer, if you bought a PC, you bought your first PC in 1999. It's a pretty big investment for a household in 1999 to have a personal computer in the home. In order to keep up with the Joneses and to keep up with technology, you'd have to go and buy a new computer to handle the new stuff ever so often, depending on your income. Could be anywhere from every other year to every 5 or 10 years. But you had to buy a new computer to handle the new stuff.
Yep.
Just to be able to use it with the current technology. Data centers take that impetus off the end user of having to upgrade their own hardware, their own computers, every other year, every 5 years. Instead, you just connect to the data center with the system you already have, and it does the hard work.
And you're out of that drudgery and that cycle, right? And so much faster. Coming right back with Don Redman from AAA after the news.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
We welcome now Don Redman, spokesman for AAA Mississippi. Hey, Don, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Gerard. Always enjoy it. Thank you.
All right, so give us an update. How we been doing with the summer, I guess, busy summer driving season about half over. Has this spike in the price of gas, certainly relative to last year, has that had an impact on the traveling public?
As a matter of fact, we've seen just a slight increase. We saw new record numbers for the Independence Day holiday, and we expect that trend to carry out throughout the summer. No doubt that the higher gas prices, I think, we're almost $1 more than we were a year ago, but it definitely has hurt the family budget, but I feel overall the people must feel very confident in where their current positions and are making those trips anyway. Now, if this war continues and these prices now, oil is up almost $15 from just a week ago, we're looking close to $80 a barrel. That's ultimately going to reflect on higher gas prices. We know that. Will that start slowing us down by the time we get into the fall travel months? I think that remains to be seen. There's so many variables at play right now. But, what we found over the years is just the price of gasoline itself doesn't determine whether people travel or not. It's how they feel about their personal economy. And I think this year was, despite the, continued pressures of inflation, costs seem to go up everywhere, including the price of fill at the tank. I think there was still a sense of confidence that people had in their budgets. But, no mistake about it. The longer higher prices for gasoline, it starts digging into that family budget, and they certainly have to start cutting back. Usually, one of the first places we see is the restaurant industry. People aren't going out to eat as much and just trying to cut back some of that discretionary income. But you hit a wall where there's just only so much you can cut back on.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. So I wonder if folks are traveling even more than they did last year. Are they changing their eating habits? Are they maybe packing food to eat along the travel, or are they eating at less expensive restaurants perhaps?
Yeah, they're looking for budgets all the way around, from maybe stepping down the type of hotel they're staying at. And what we typically have also found is sometimes they don't stay as long as they had. Maybe they cut back a night or something, save whatever that hotel expense. So those are some other ways that people start saving. They want to take advantage of that vacation in the summer. The kids are out of school, and we have a corporate mentality of you use it or you lose it. And they don't want to lose it, but maybe they'll. And I expect our state parks probably get a real big workout as well for the summer. They still want to have our vacation, just maybe have to downsize a little bit their expectation, not traveling as far or staying as long.
So I wonder, Don, if we have a net travel outside of our state from people who live here, or if it's a net of travelers into our state, tourists, I guess, that come from other states. We seem to be doing pretty well in the tourism department, according to reports from that particular department that oversees and promotes and tracks tourism in Mississippi.
Yeah, we don't track the numbers of the individual states, but you just look at it anecdotally, and I think the state has done a good job promoting those different, the different trails that you have, from the Tamale Trail to the Blues Trail to, the Gulf Coast, of course, has its own big attraction there. I think the state's really is punching above its weight in terms of trying to get people to come to Mississippi for a vacation or spend some time here.
Yeah. So I know you guys don't necessarily, I guess, track this, but just curious as to the price of air travel is up substantially as well. Is that maybe causing, do you guys think, is a factor in people taking to the roads more and motoring traffic up?
When we looked at the Independence Day travel forecast, those numbers those who were flying really didn't budge much. So there wasn't a decrease. But obviously, anytime you have a big travel holiday, the vehicle is going to be the number one mode of transportation. It's going to consume either 89 to 95% of the people who travel will be by car, because it's more economical, especially for a family. But we didn't see people dialing back on their air plans. So they did travel in good numbers. Though these are marginal numbers, maybe a 0.5% more than the previous year,
I see,
or something like that. Where we actually saw sizable increases is the number of people who we classified as other modes of transportation: bus, train, and cruise. And obviously, cruise are the big thing. People have really returned to cruising, and for Mississippi AAA members, Alaskan cruise is a big deal. So a lot of these plans obviously were ironed out in December for now, but that's one of our top destinations domestically for a lot of our AAA members in Mississippi, is take that cruise to Alaska.
Interesting.
I've never been, but it looks very appealing.
Yeah, I've certainly seen some of the promotional materials on it. I agree. My wife has, but I wasn't able to go. Yeah, all the reports are positive from anyone I know who has traveled to Alaska for the beauty. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
What about data your organization may have over the Independence Day travel period with respect to calls that AAA and AAA's partners responded to?
Yeah, we haven't seen the total numbers here, but we were projecting close to 400,000 calls for just that holiday itself. I mean, it's people aren't checking their tires out. They got some worn tires. And of course, faulty batteries. But yeah, it's a big. Anytime you see that kind of movement, and we are at that time we're expecting over 61 million people traveling for the holiday. You're just going to see this huge uptick in the number of people calling for help. And the top three reasons that we're called for are flat tires, dead batteries, and lockouts. And sometimes that lockout coincides with the dead battery. You can't get into your car, your battery's dead.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and that's why we, really preach, please check your tires out before you head out. Make sure they're not bald. You can't completely avoid a blowout, but if you got bad treads on your tire and all that, or you're driving around with a deflated spare tire, that doesn't help us any. So, those are the big calls, but yeah, and that's why I always caution for traveling, especially for the summer. make sure you got some cool water with you or something like that, because it could take 45 minutes to an hour in this heat waiting for help to arrive, and you want to have something to keep yourself cool. Well, here in the state of Mississippi, AAA has pretty good coverage from your partners, do you not? Yeah, we do. It's hard, lining up some contractors in some of the really rural areas and all that, but that's been an area that's been near and dear to us that we've hung our hat on is that roadside assistance, and we work quite aggressively with our contractors to provide that coverage for our members. Yeah, I would think that is a major benefit and a major feature of membership, of course, is just having that rather ubiquitous roadside assistance. I personally use it. I've shared that with you before. I've had a flat tire, just as you said, I had a flat tire headed to a remote last year on I-55. Not exactly sure how it happened, but I noticed the gauge inside my vehicle indicating that it was losing pressure. And then I had a battery acting up. Went down to Florida on a golf trip with my buddies, and again used my membership to address both of those issues. Yeah, in our heat, typically a car battery is supposed to last 5 years. They tout it as lasting 5 years, but in our heat in the Gulf South, you're talking maybe 3 years. So that's why we strongly encourage you to look at the date. Your battery will have a date. Check how old it is. If it's 3 years old or older, you want to get what we call a load test, or you can, drive to a auto parts place and ask them, check my battery for you, and they'll tell you whether he's at full strength or not. And if not, you might want to consider replacing it before you head out, because that heat just kills the battery in a heartbeat. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So heat can actually put an additional load strain, I guess, on the battery, which means that their lifespan isn't as long. Useful life isn't as long. Their lifespan is shortened. Okay. Interesting. So that's why folks ought to check, especially before they get ready to travel a decently long distance, you would think. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to spend your vacation on the side of the road, and and besides, we just preach this all the time. Every state has a slow down, move over law, and Mississippi's pretty aggressive. We just wish they would include stranded motorists in that definition. Yeah. But if you're broke down, just know that side of that highway is extremely dangerous, and you don't want to be camped out there. 100%. Don Redmond, spokesman for AAA Mississippi, has been our guest. Appreciate you coming on, Don. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again soon. You got it. Thank you. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
If you interrupt this program,
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. The Mississippi Lottery Corporation just issued a press release concerning the amount it transferred in net proceeds for the month of June, $8.6 million. That brings the total to $126,598,000 and change. That's a 12% increase over fiscal year 25. That is the second largest annual transfer since the lottery began selling tickets in November of 2019. Over $818 million has been transferred to the state of Mississippi since inception of the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. So we should be bumping on the $950 million range next year in terms of total transfers since the lottery has been operating. So That's good news. You know, the first $80 million in proceeds transferred to the Mississippi Department of Transportation, the State Highway Fund for road and bridge improvements. The remaining proceeds produced in a year, over $80 million, are deposited into the Education Enhancement Fund. And that was established several years ago by law, and it prescribes how monies in the fund are to be allocated. There's numerous formulas that are used to make those determinations in the actual statute. So some of the uses include the early learning collaborative, school supplies. You've seen a lot about that recently. Fixed assets, stadiums, HVAC, buildings, etc. So that's why it's called the Education Enhancement Fund. It's kind of all the things that support education that aren't part of the general fund where the state appropriates monies to education, which primarily consists of payment for teachers, educators themselves. That's the big cost associated with that. So this fund is designed to enhance, if you will, the education environment. If you think about school supplies, the early learning collaborative, fixed assets, stadiums, buildings, HVAC, etc. Stuff that's more periodic in nature as a need. On the ceasefire text line, by the way, Jason in Tupelo said, as a mail carrier, more daylight in the PM would be much help. Ricky in Aberdeen says, just tuning in, so you may already have discussed this, but in rural areas, kids waiting on the side of the road for the bus in the dark would be my only concern with the daylight saving time going permanent. Yeah, you're right, Ricky, and that's what I recall when this was implemented for a couple of years. I want to say in the early 70s. I was in school then. I was a student then. And I remember that being a problem, folks complaining about, waiting out for the bus in the dark. And that's, according to the chart that I have, says that the sun would rise around 8 a.m., 8:03 a.m. on average for the entire month of January under daylight saving time. So that's clearly that's well after the buses are moving and running and folks are on the road traveling, going to work and so forth. So you'd be doing that in the dark. Of course, you may not be traveling in the dark from work. Wouldn't affect school because that currently, even in the winter months, school's out before it gets dark. But you could be, for the most part. But
I mean, if you're the last kid to get dropped off the bus,
true.
You can very well get dropped off after dark.
You're right.
In the winter.
There's some long routes in the rural areas. That's Ricky's point. So I hear you. But the average person that works your 9-to-5 job or 8-to-5 or whatever it is, in the dead of the winter, you're going home in the dark, traveling in the dark. So this would change that on the flip side of things there. So we'll see. Is there a way to make everybody happy on this? The answer is no, right? I think everybody's got a preference. I don't know that there is any situation that gets 100% liking and approval. But does appear that most people would prefer not to have to change the clocks. I've already said I'm on record. I'm fine with that. I'd like to keep it the way it is. But if we're going to convert to a single time structure year-round, I would prefer it be daylight saving time, which looks like has a chance of passing in the Senate. We'll see. And I wanted to follow up with Kathy. So I talked about kind of the utility of data centers. And again, what really made it all possible, two things. One is installing fiber all over the place and the advances in technology in fiber, in networking, which means that you can house programs and data somewhere other than under your roof and not sacrifice performance. And in fact, a big selling feature of cloud services, which are the main thing that data centers provide and deliver, is a business no longer has a big upfront investment to provision an IT solution. So in the old days, you had to have money to go buy a bunch of hardware, a bunch of software. Then you paid ongoing maintenance for that. And so, and it also took way longer to implement those systems. But if those systems are already implemented, they're all already operational, and you just want to subscribe to them, you just essentially sign up and boom, you log on and you're computing. That really did change that consumption model, changed the value proposition of information technology. That's hugely beneficial to companies, and it was really what drove this transition, if you will, more to consuming IT from the cloud architecture, which is powered by data centers, as opposed to buying all that stuff and housing it in your building. And then the other thing is security, just the digital security. It's hard, and most companies just don't have the resources, and it's continuous. The bad guys never sleep. Well, when you're consuming that from someone in that business that has all those powerful technologies, even the smallest business is able to receive the protections that were once reserved from only the largest, most sophisticated, most affluent companies. Yet they still need those protections, because they lose access to their system, they're out of business. And so that's another benefit. And then, of course, you don't have to worry about backup. You don't have to worry about resiliency and redundancy and, oh, my gosh, what would happen if this thing failed and I only got one of them? I can't afford two. And even if I had to, what good does it do me if they're in the same building, right? When a tornado comes through, you lost both of them. So these are just some of the benefits of data centers and the hardened aspect of it, and this transition we've made in consuming IT from this architecture, as opposed to you just got accustomed to buying it and installing it and utilizing it inside your building, if you will. That's kind of a simplistic case. But so even the smallest of organizations have access to super powerful application software and IT services that otherwise it wouldn't be available to them. So that's the benefit. Now, on the downside, I want to be fair to Kathy's question, said, what are the cons? And that list is, I think, become fairly standardized. Rhino, if you look at the complainers and the detractors, although I will say that it seems like every day somebody dreams up something new that they attribute. The other day I saw a comment on a post where somebody said that it was causing childhood cancer. I have no idea where they came up with that. And they go into this long litany of how much it costs to treat childhood cancer. And I don't deny that. And that's terrible. That's a tragedy. I don't want to see anybody have cancer, especially
you don't deny
a child.
that it's expensive to treat childhood cancer.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. But the idea that data centers, so you're saying computers are causing childhood cancer? I'm not, because that's what they are. They're buildings with computers in them.
Well,
where are they getting
these
this?
people are the people that are convinced 5G is mind control.
Well, that's true. And whatever happened to that prediction that all the cell phones were going to kill us all? That goes back 20 years. Has that happened yet? Are we still waiting on that? Yeah, I think so.
It's in the same boat as Al Gore saying there wouldn't be any snow on Mount Fuji at this time.
That's absolutely true. And AOC, what?
Almost like hysterics and neuroticism are not a good mix.
What AOC said, we had 7 years or something, we'd all be dead. Or so I may be exaggerating a little bit, but not.
We're already a couple years past the end of the world, according to Greta Thunberg.
That's true. But I'll cover the rest of that when we come back. We're in the Element Well studio.
From the Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was going to be the greatest this rain a lot.
On the C Spire text line, pardon me, everything about technology has a good use for most people in media, but what about the people pushing data centers around the state and country need to come up with is how to keep these data centers from further harming the environment. When they come to each area where they want to put a data center, they should also be required by law to have a plan on how that data center will not harm the environment. Well, not really sure exactly what you're saying there, but you're certainly aware that we do have environmental protection laws, both at the federal, state, and in some cases at the local level. There are ordinances that exceed federal and state law. Can't override it, but or reduce and impose less restrictive policy, but can add on and impose more restrictive policy. Let's take, maybe this is a good example, maybe it's not. We have federal standards for vehicle emissions, for example. Yet California exceeds that. And the dang car manufacturers, as you know, have to make a California version and a non-California version to comply with California's additional restrictions. That's kind of an example. But no state can implement emission regulations that would be less than federal law. So the only point I'm trying to make here is that we do have that, and they do have to comply with all those laws. So, and that, by the way, that's not, as you know, Rhino, that's not specific to data centers. That's just in our country. Any end user, any industrial development, any business, even your house. I mean, there's permitting and there are environmental restrictions. An example, Rhino, would be, we have laws. I'm pretty sure it's in the state, if not even federal, where you see a house under construction, you'll see the silt fence, right, built on the construction site. I'm pretty sure that's to comply with certain environmental regulations to keep all the silt while you're in the construction period, because you don't have any grass holding the dirt in place from just drifting off there, right, and just washing away. It's just an example of, but heck, construction is probably one of the more regulated industries with respect to environmental concerns. Now, and again, these laws, these restrictions, these regulations, they apply to all industrial developments, not just data centers. So I'm not sure how it got out there, and like our person on the text line evidently is under the impression that they just go out and build and don't require permits and don't have to comply with federal, state, and local laws concerning the environment. That's just not true. They absolutely do. They 100% do. With respect to...
But that's the kind of notion you're given if you only listen to the naysayers and the willfully ignorant politicians who are making anti-data center a part of their platform.
And we've seen that. So there is this perception, I'm going to call it a misconception, that we're going to approve the construction, and then they're going to go out there and break environmental laws, and we're going to find out about that after the fact. That's just not true. That's not happening. And if they are, throw the book at them. Cite them for it. Make them pay the fines and fix whatever is in violation of the law. That's been on the books for decades. We don't need more laws. We got plenty of laws that govern this. But somehow this evolved into, oh yeah, they're doing it all behind closed doors and it's nefarious. And then all of a sudden you wake up and they've poisoned all the water and all the air. That's just not true. Not remotely true. I don't know where that came from. But a common...
Hyperbole, hysterics, and neuroticism. Exacerbated by spending too much time online.
Evidently. But the common objections, as you know, are, well, they're taking up all the farmland. And that's just categorically false. First, the amount of land used by these facilities is a lot less than Walmart's use across the country And what it amounts to, again, is a fraction of the land. And there may be some cases, but there are no sites in the state of Mississippi where data centers are being built on what used to be growing food or fiber. There are no farms that are being plowed under to put a data center on. That's just not happening. I don't know where that came from. So that's one objection. Another objection is they're using all the electricity. Well, we have the ability to generate more electricity. Don't we have a lot more today than we did 40 years ago? 100 years ago when we started wiring up the country? So it's not like we don't have the ability to produce more electricity. So it's like we're going to run out of electricity. Well, only if we don't build more generation and transmission. Now, is it possible you can get ahead and you can put stress and demand? Well, sure. But we can cure that by building more. Now, in the state of Mississippi, one of the things that we were sure of, and in fact, the governor insisted on this, and I refer to the AWS Project Madison because it was the first, and it became kind of the model for the rest of them is, we got to make sure that this will not affect ratepayers and that Entergy can supply sufficient electricity to accommodate this additional burden on the grid. And they're doing that. They're spending $3 billion, and Amazon's paying for it. So now in the Midwest and in the Middle Atlantic and the Northeast, they went full nutcase, and they want everything to be renewable energy. And so they got behind. They're having a hard time just powering what they got. Forget about adding data centers. It's not data centers that are causing their problem. It's stupid policy that's causing their problem. New York, for example, aren't there some issues about the pipelines from Pennsylvania have to go around the world? You know what I'm talking about here. Pennsylvania is flush. It's always New York with natural gas, but they won't let them get it out. One of the first things you remember that Trump came in and did was restart the pipelines in western Pennsylvania where we have an abundance of natural gas, which is the primary fuel source for electricity generation in this country. It's stupid policy that's causing this problem, not the fact that we're using more. That's the common liberal position. We just got to do without, right? No gas, no flying, no big gulps, no pizza that's cooked in wood-fired ovens, no natural gas connections to new residents. It's always you got to do without something, which is a power trip more than it is anything else. So that's another complaint. Data centers, because of the massive investment being made by these companies, and because they will be the largest customers for electricity providers, we actually will benefit from long-term lower rates. And there's been several reports the last couple of weeks, literally, about kilowatt-hour charges are actually declining as a result of the economies of scale being achieved. And then the one that's perhaps my favorite that's just nothing but misinformation is water. You did a great job for us last week with your analogy of Olympic-sized swimming pools and water, and you and I talked about the math and so forth. But here's the bottom line. The AWS project, Madison County, will consume 170, latest data, 170 million gallons per year. In the state of Mississippi, we consume 1 trillion gallons per year. And you make the point all the time that sometimes we get into the big numbers and people just kind of get glazed over when that happens. But for those you keeping score, that amounts to about 0.017% of the total water being consumed. It's less than the Nissan plant consumes that makes cars across the street, and it's been doing it for 20 years. They consume about 360 million gallons a year. We consume more water flushing toilets than cooling data centers, irrigating golf courses than cooling data centers. It's 17.5 billion gallons a year are consumed by data centers in the U.S. However, the country consumes 120 trillion gallons. And I know it's big numbers. It gets crazy. So it's the same old thing. You're looking at 0.0017% of the total water consumed. I saw somebody the other day said, Amazon's lying. They say they're only using 40 billion gallons worldwide. It was 2.5 billion worldwide. They're using 40 times more than that. That's 100 billion. You know how much we use worldwide? I looked it up. The U.S. Geological Survey tracks all this. It's not Gerard making this up. This is the government. Now, I know a lot of people say I don't trust the government. I think the U.S. Geological Survey is an authority on this. 946 trillion gallons. We're almost at a quadrillion gallons of annual water consumption. In other words, this is a teeny tiny infinitesimal fraction. Coming right back.
The one by covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
We got a clip we're going to play. The governor just released. He made a statement as well on the city of Jackson's decision to issue a moratorium on data centers. We're going to get to that in just a second. But Bubba Starkville said, where was the outrage regarding solar farms that did take thousands of acres of farmland in Mississippi? Yeah, I hear you, Bubba. And, you know, I would just say that,
in fairness, there was some backlash and pushback on that.
There was, and there's some even west of here, as you know, and on 20 in Bolton. But I would just say, does the landowner not have the right to sell their land? And if it was to install solar panels on it, does whoever did that, are they within the law in doing so? So we shouldn't be mad at parties who are adhering to the law. If we don't like it, okay, we'll change the law. If you want to say, hey, you can't ever sell your farm to somebody that wants to do something else with it, well, that'd be a problem. We can't even get a law passed in Mississippi to prevent the Chinese, our adversaries. We've tried. You know that. Can't get that through. Arkansas actually did. You can't buy agricultural, and you can't buy near military installations. There's a couple of other areas as well. But yeah, I hear you, and it's just mind-boggling to me that we can't seem to discuss this issue with fact. Like the whole water thing is probably the most absurd one of all, and like one of the people who was part of our 2 days of panel discussion was from the Earth Justice Group. I don't know if it's Earth Justice Institute. He zoomed in and, man, when he was going through the water, it's like you think if we build another data center, we're not going to have any water to drink ever. And it's a teeny tiny fraction of the water. Now, does it make sense to put anything that consumes water in an area where you're already struggling with the supply of water? No, it doesn't. I agree with that. But that's just common sense. That ain't a problem here. And not only that, when you're using reclaimed water, contrary to what this guy said, you're not drawing water from an aquifer, right? Now, when you're using well water, such as the Ridgeland campus in Madison is, you are. But it ain't like we'll have plenty. And the amount it will consume, you did the math for us the other day and expressed it in terms of Olympic-sized swimming pools and the number of homes. It's still just a minimal amount.
Yeah, even if you have a hard time visualizing multiple Olympic-sized swimming pools, nobody would bat an eye if a big-time investor came to the city of Ridgeland and said, you know what, I've bought this land over here. I want to put in a couple subdivisions. We're going to build 50 houses. Because it would be the same amount of water used on an average basis for those 50 houses as the data center. Nobody would say a word if you got 50 new houses about how much water those houses are going to use. But I guarantee you there's not the same level of economic investment to build 2 subdivisions as it is to build a data center.
Somehow we've gotten to the point where we believe that the supply of water is finite, that we don't keep producing more. But yesterday the governor said the idiots in New York are banning data centers, entering moratoriums, and surrendering the future of technology to China. He just had a little press conference. Here it is right here.
We spend a lot of time recruiting for economic development, and I don't think the city council's decision to put a moratorium on data centers in Jackson is very smart, because you cannot on the one hand on one day say we are broke and we don't have enough revenue to fund all of the things we want to fund, and then on the other hand say, but we don't want any businesses to locate in Mississippi or in Jackson that may provide additional revenue. I don't know if y'all have seen the kind of revenue that's going to be flowing into the county to the north from those data centers, but it is significant, and that's one of the things that is very encouraging with respect to the major AWS announcements, both west of the capital city and north of the capital city.
Bravo, Governor. Thank you. That's just common sense. The president, by the way, guys, he made a statement earlier today on his Truth Social. Woo, he blasted Kathy Hochul. One of the biggest driving forces is his President Donald Trump on his Truth Social. In the future, for jobs or data centers, they are big, strong, bold, and money machines for the state in which they are built. Governor Kathy Hochul, for political reasons, has terminated all data centers being built or to be built in New York State. These companies are now being sought in Alabama, Florida, Texas, and Arizona. And I'm going to add, Mr. President, in Mississippi, too. He said they're liquid gold, and he goes on. Greg in Madison said his wife is an artist and she found Chat GPT and now she's loving what she can do with it, and she's a non-computer type person. Well, of course, and that's great. Another person said, Rhino, we need 50 new houses. We don't need 100 times the amount of data centers in China.
I'm talking about water usage,
yeah,
man.
Exactly.
If it weren't for nitpickers, we wouldn't have anybody on the text line, it seems like some days.
How do we make the point? It's not an either or. Everybody thinks it's a binary choice. It's not. Palmer home tomorrow, folks. We're going to be calling on you to open up your wallet. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.